Thank you very much to the program director, and greetings to all the delegates at this conference. I'd like to thank the conference hosts for inviting me to make closing remarks, although it is a hazardous terrain for me because I hadn't attended any part of the conference. So I hope that you will consider my remarks useful and not irritatingly repetitive or irrelevant. I actually don't know why I agreed to be here. It was something to do with the Nelson Mandela Foundation, I think, trying to get closer to Trialogue. So I hope it will be worth all our while. So since being invited, I've been taking a closer look at the whole subject of business social responsibility. And I do know that corporate responsibility plays a very important role in our country, contributing to the sectors that were in the panel here, as well as others that you've had in the course of the conference: education, health, child development, higher education support, student support, greening our world, and sustaining our world for future generations, as well as growing and supporting civil society through consistent support to nonprofit organizations. In addition, private sector social investment has promoted small business growth and entrepreneurship development, very important goals and achievements for our country. I was looking at some very useful research by Natasha Mueller-Hirth, who sets out the imperatives for the social responsiveness of business in our country. In her articles, she cites statutory requirements as well as policy instruments such as Black economic empowerment. But she also provides useful insights on how to measure impact and to assess the links between corporate social responsibility and government development goals. Now, what is interesting in the work that she's done is that she also provides evidence that some corporate social investment commitment did exist in our apartheid past, and it supported areas of neglect by the apartheid state. It was, of course, not at the level of the billions of rands now spent on CSR annually. Nonetheless, there were businesses that provided bursaries to students, fellowships, and others that supported the development of senior Black managers in the private sector following adoption of the Sullivan Principles. But the growth of corporate social investment has really expanded exponentially with the achievement of freedom in South Africa. So freedom and democracy has had a tremendous impact for a diverse set of larger contributions and a growth in development-oriented non-governmental organizations. I think it's vital that business makes such investments, especially given that the private sector in South Africa did play an enabling role in supporting apartheid and creating the difficult and challenging legacy of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. It is this legacy that the business sector should work at addressing. The role of government is, of course, critical. Civil society also brings value, as has been stated in the course of the two panels I listened into this afternoon. I think NPO's outreach and community links are vitally important to achieving real impact. But in the private sector, we have the skills, capacity, and capital resources that can speedily reverse the decline of our country if properly targeted and efficiently implemented. We have many frameworks that guide the actions and programs of corporate social responsibility. Among the most important, I think, are the King 3 report on a framework for CSR. It is probably one of the most insightful reports on proposals in this domain. Dedicated research and scrutiny of corporate actions and their contributions indicate that this area of investment is vital for the future of South Africa, of Africa, and of the globe, and I shall deal with those momentarily. Our private sector has played a part in our democratic era successes, but models such as Triple Ps and other profit-making partnerships cannot provide the transformative value we could secure in what I propose in terms of rethinking corporate social responsibility strategically. Of course, it is positive that today many new post-apartheid corporate responsibility contributions make a difference to many individuals, families, and communities. But think for a moment if there were stronger partnerships in executing local economic development strategies and plans, our national development plan, and global climate change responses, or if we had partnerships in implementing well-designed and research-aided minerals beneficiation strategies in our vast mineral sector in our country. Just focusing on partnerships in these would make a fundamental difference to the economic trajectory of our country. When one reflects on corporate philanthropy and partnerships between business, government, and NGOs at this strategically critical time, as we face very challenging, turbulent, and unanticipated geopolitical environments, we're reminded of what Steve Biko famously said when he said, "Black man, you are on your own." Today, it's perhaps appropriate for us to say to ourselves, South Africa and Africa, you are now on your own in this chaotic geopolitical environment. The removal of international aid by the United States of America from our country and other countries, as well as declines in funding by a number of European countries, creates new challenges and opportunities for CSR in South Africa. International aid was, for example, playing an important role in our fight against HIV and AIDS. It also helped build vital research capacity and increase health innovation. Given corporate commitment to being social investors in a better future for South Africa, our private sector must surely not allow CAPRISA at the University of KwaZulu-Natal to collapse, cannot neglect support to innovative women researchers at the CSIR who depended on international funding, and must not permit an increase in deaths from HIV. In addition, NPOs that have played a leading role in the response to HIV and AIDS require substantive support to continue their good work. And it would be great if NPOs that were and are working in this area could write more publicly about how South African corporates have responded to the breach, and whether we are now seeing a death of these important NPOs or a very nimble responsiveness by the corporate sector. I believe our government, business, and non-governmental organizations should be working together to avoid a looming health and social tragedy. You will recall that a few years ago, we were one of the countries with the highest number of HIV-related deaths. And following improvement in our responsiveness and availability of treatment, we were able to arrest that decline and even had an improvement in our mortality in our country. With the removal of funding by the United States of America, we are facing a dire situation, and I think it is one that we must find responses to. I know that all of you present here are fully familiar with the development priorities that confront our country, South Africa, our continent, as well as the globe. I believe strategic focus on these priorities would create sustained progress rather than interim relief from problems. There are several areas that I believe should continue to be of interest and support if real substantive change is your investment goal. Firstly, it's important to continue contributing to advancing transformation in real and sustainable terms in South Africa. Social investments should lead to improved employment, decline in poverty and inequality, and positive changes in business ownership in our country and beyond. I get distressed when I see adverts that say we've trained 5,000 entrepreneurs, but we're not told how many of them survive beyond the training. We've trained 10,000 digital skilled young people, and then what happens after that? So I think it must not just be the training. We need to look beyond it. I also propose that we should give greater attention to investing on the African continent and focusing on improving our continent's capacity to implement the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. This is one of the most important agreements our African Union has initiated. And if we succeed in enhancing and growing intra-African trade, we will make a significant difference to the course of development of the African continent. So it's important that when we have these policy prescripts, we don't see them as distinct from corporate social investment. They should be of concern to all of us because they alter our continent's future. I also think we should give greater attention to supporting our African Union Agenda 2063 and its 17 development priorities. Our private sector, and I know this from my own work experience, has strengthened retail and financial service access on the continent, as well as access to telecommunications technology. But more has to be done to ensure Africa develops into the continent aspired to by our Agenda 2063. So I think we need a focus on well-crafted plans to address logistics, transport services in Africa, quality products for export, and the building of capable, efficient businesses in Africa. Many people believe when they talk about corporate responsibility that it should be primarily domestic or national based, and they give little regard to responsibility for global matters. So the fourth imperative I wish to propose is that at the global level, it is vital that we have intense corporate support for multilateralism, democracy, and respect for human rights and good governance. If we neglect these, we will no longer become successful private sector companies. So they are important to the future of the private sector. All of these focal areas require trialogue partnerships as they involve a range of sectoral interests. So I'm talking about global. I may seem to you illogical at this moment, but when you have chaotic demagogues in government trying to govern all of us, we will all be grateful for strengthened investments in international law and in international law institutions that are robust. All of this hints for me at the need for a strategic examination of present focus areas and programs. I don't wish in any way to detract from the important investments you're making, but I wish to suggest that the agenda is far bigger, and we need to look at that larger agenda because we are part of the globe, and as South Africa, I believe we can be of great influence in creating a better world. I believe the private sector cannot be neglectful of societal issues which influence local, regional, and global affairs. Current conflicts in the world and breaches of international law signal new challenges and require attention to new solutions. I'm sure none of you imagined that we today would be sitting in our sitting rooms observing on television the starvation of Palestinian women, children, and men before our very eyes. This is something that should not happen. It's a breach of international law, and we should be robust in building global capacity to respond effectively to such challenges. Because if we do not attend to it, who will be next? I am certain that in your conference you have discussed the possible socioeconomic impact of your social responsibility programs beyond support for NPOs that work on local development issues. I have been impressed at the manner in which NPOs overseas grow into social entrepreneurs and create innovative products, increased employment, and self-sustaining organizations. It's very interesting when you visit the United Kingdom or the United States of America that you find there's a large number of NPOs, and they play a very significant role in economic and social development. They actually become significant employers, significant builders of capacity, and provide responsiveness for communities to local development issues. I believe that we should build that kind of NPO entrepreneurship in our country, and we should multiply the number of NPOs that we have in South Africa because they're an amazing resource for social change and social development. I also support the growth of social responsibility programs that support new entrepreneurs and convert community-based micro-businesses into successful small and medium-sized businesses that generate real jobs and real livelihoods. I never forget Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka's statements when she was Minister of Trade and Industry many years ago, when she said, rather than looking at creating millionaires, we should be working harder at creating thousands of thousandaires. And that is converting micro businesses into successful small and medium-sized businesses. This is something we can do if we provide appropriate infrastructure and modern capacity. So for example, a number of you do stop by the roadside and get chisanyama, but you never ask your corporate to look at improving the infrastructure of the mama who is chisaying the nyama. And I think if we could provide support to those mamas, we would have an alteration to business growth in South Africa. I also know that the private sector has contributed to creating a larger cohort of qualified graduates in South Africa, but has somehow not devoted sufficient attention to increasing post-secondary institutions, such as new public universities, nor provided endowment funding to our intellectual institutions, and even to legacy institutions such as the Nelson Mandela Foundation. I was horrified a few months ago when a group of academics came to meet with me and told me that funding for one of their key scientific sectors had been withdrawn by a South African corporate because the university had made a statement in support of the people of Palestine. I found it absolutely horrifying that a South African company could behave in that way, particularly because we, as South Africans, asked the world to support us when we were struggling against apartheid. And yet today we feel we shouldn't be interested in anybody else's problems. This is a very bad attitude on our part, and we need to address it. I do think it's distressing to see leading tuberculosis research centers closed down when NHI funding of the United States is withdrawn, or to observe the limitations on legacy foundations, which could contribute to inculcating new values and principles in our society and beyond. If there's one area in which we are neglectful in terms of corporate social responsibility, it is the area of legacy and heritage, and we have to give attention to this. Otherwise, we'll produce a people competent in everything but no knowledge of history and culture, and that will be a real problem for our society. We should be looking, as South Africa corporate, at these pearls and ensure that we have proper investment in them so that they generate new knowledge and progressive outcomes. Outcomes that will advance our transformation goals and modernize South African corporate responsibility. Allow me to close by acknowledging all the corporates that do generously provide development program support, skills training, as well as financial resources to our not-for-profit organizations. I am aware from all the debates and the reading that much is being done, but I do believe that the time has come, now that we're maturing, to critically examine our strategic intentions due to the continued prevalence in our country of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. I believe we are not positing the problem sufficiently. We're not asking ourselves, why do we continue to have these features in our society? And how can our corporate social responsibility programs allow us to alter the situation? Is it possible through what we do to actually reduce levels of poverty, to build new communities, to reduce the number of informal dwellings, to ensure that we build new telecommunication-oriented suburbs in township areas, rather than living with the dismal conditions that we are allowing our people to live in? I don't know which corporate would work with a community and sit down with them and say, I know you live in really bad conditions. I'm aware of a university that has developed new sustainable green building materials. I'd like to sit with you, community A, and we're going to design a new suburb with you. And you will contribute to building it. What a different South Africa we would create with such an initiative. So that is what I propose by suggesting critical examination of our strategic intentions. I think there's something we're not quite getting right, and we need to identify it and alter where recovered. And of course, I know, we always have the imperative of responding by saying, it is government. But we're in this game together. This is our South Africa, and we have to find ways of working together to alter our country's condition. I believe, finally, that there are sufficient human, financial, and institutional resources present in this room to cause a radical alteration to our future. And I really ask you that you consider these possibilities, and I wish you well in all your endeavors. Thank you very much for listening to me.